thanks for coming, ladies and gentlemen. Can we have a big warm round of applause for Mr. Greg Haver?
Thank you.
Let's just put this in the frame right now. He's just come back from...
I was in Prague this morning.
I
was in Prague in the early hours of this morning. It was the Czech Music Awards, bizarrely, last night, and there's a band I produced at Rockfield Studios last September, and they were up for loads of awards, and they won Best Band. So we ended up at some club about 3 o'clock this morning. So, but I made my flight, and but there was pretty bad traffic and everything on the motorway. So thank you for waiting. I do apologise for keeping you waiting around, but I made it.
He's a busy man, and we're doing this on a Friday, literally because Greg's only back for a small window. He actually lives in New Zealand.
I had free, yeah.
It's the only day he had free. So we have to thank the caretakers for opening up this evening for us, because they've made it all possible, really. So I've got them a bottle of wine in the car. I'm going to give them on the way out.
Just keep it away from me. I understand it today.
Not again.
Yes, sorry it's a Friday. It was the only day I had free when Tony contacted me, so...
So this is the beginning of a lecture series for this semester that we're going to be putting on with people who are obviously very well grounded in the industry. They've been doing it for quite a few years. Yes.
Yeah, many years.
We've also got, I'll tell you at the end, we've got an interesting musician coming in May, and we're hoping to put a couple more on as well before the summer. So this kicks it off, and it's basically a very informal discussion. We're going to talk, Greg's going to tell me about his career. We're going to talk a little bit about the recording studio and the role of the recording studio today with all modern technology for home studios and things like that. Touch a little bit about the web distribution, and then there'll be some questions and answers. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit shorter than we thought, by half an hour, but we could speak quite quickly, can't we?
We can get it all in, yeah.
So, tell us about Greg Haver.
About me. Well, I started life as a musician. Well, I still am a musician. I started as a drummer back in the 1970s, like late 70s. Just really briefly, you might have had a look online to see what I've kind of done, but I've owned recording studios. I owned a studio back in the 90s, which is kind of where my career sort of in production really started, because we had a lot of this sort of Welsh bands from that era kind of coming through the studios, Manic Street Preachers, Catatonia, Super Furry Animals. So it was quite a sort of hub for music. So I've kind of done a bit of everything. I've had a publishing deal with a couple of major publishers, EMI in London. I've owned a record label, 2 record labels, Big Noise Recordings and Booby Trap, which I owned with Hugh Stevens from Radio 1. And we got our funding from Sony Music. So we had a singles club. We put out a single every month by different artists, and it was a really good sort of way to find new artists and things. That was our role with Sony, really. I owned a studio, the studio Big Noise, back in Cardiff. I spent a lot of time late 80s touring. I played for a few different artists, did a lot of session work, which is where I got my interest in recording studios. I started doing a lot of sessions up at Air Studios in London and various studios as a drummer. And I used to sit around and watch the producers and engineers working, and I really liked that creative side of it, and it was like that magic of music coming together from nothing. You walk in the sort of the sort of start of the first day, and there's nothing, and by the end of that day, you've kind of dragged all these electrons out of the air, and you've created something that's artistic. And I really was fascinated by that whole side of it, and what you could do with it, and the way you could play with sonics and everything. So when I had my publishing deal with the EMI, I realised a few years in that I was actually not a very good songwriter, and it was like I wasn't really liking the songs I was writing, but I really enjoyed the process of making the demos of the songs. Although I learned a lot about sort of song structures and things that are really useful for producing now, which is sort of how to pull a song apart and rebuild it, and which I do with a lot of sort of especially young artists that I work with. Often the arrangements are kind of slightly vague, so I learned a lot about that, and I just kind of try to work my way through the industry and find a career path that sort of. And the one thing about the music industry that I've learned in the last 10 years is that need for flexibility. Because the industry now is totally different to the industry it was 10 years ago, and totally different to what it was in the 80s. I mean, we had bigger budgets to make records in the 1980s. Like, I compared it the other day with somebody. Our food budget on one album in the 80s was more than the whole budget I've got to make an album with now. It's kind of crazy. But, and what we were paying for studios, for Rockfield Studios, we'd pay maybe £1,200 a day in 1987, 1988. And now you can get it for like £400 a day. the economics of the industry have completely changed. And as producers, we've got to adjust our way of working constantly to try and keep the quality of the work up and still sort of, and still make records for the budgets that are available. So my constant battle has been not reducing the quality of the work, but finding ways to do it. I've got lots of workarounds. We can discuss this in Q&A and everything, but I have many ways to kind of work around sort of and find ways to do it. But, so my history is kind of like, it's pretty broad. It's a lot of, there's a lot of record producers from my age who started off life as drummers. We kind of embraced technology quite early on, drum machines, programming, sequencers, hardware sequencers, and samplers. So it was kind of a natural thing really to move into production. So yeah, I've done sort of a lot of everything really. And I think it's really good to have that broad, knowledge base. We'll talk about micro careers and different territories and all that stuff later. But it's so it's been very, very enjoyable. And I have a pretty amazing lifestyle really. It's kind of. And it is there available for anybody who sort of wants to put the work in. So.
I think with the the studio side of things, which we're going to talk about first of all, because obviously I think in the Q&A everyone's going to ask, what was it like working with the Manic Street Preachers, for example, or something like that. So let's look at the industry side and the practicality of getting into the industry. You said that you were a musician first of all, publishing deals. So obviously you had quite a large network you were building up. How did you land in the role of a producer? And can you elaborate on producer and what it means to you?
I didn't go the conventional route. A lot of guys do there were no courses available like this. I'd have killed to be on a course like this when I was learning. I literally learnt just by being hands-on, presented with a mixing desk and had to move faders around, and see what happened. Yeah. But I was lucky in the fact a lot of the bands I was in, they had early recording setups, like 8 tracks, 4 tracks. The first recording I did was with Paul White, who's the editor of Sound & Sound magazine.
I know Paul, yes.
I was playing with Paul when I was 17 years old. I was a drummer for his band, and he had a 4-track in his house in Malvern. And so I learned a lot of the basis of recording. Because the basis of recording is the same whether it's a little 4-track tape machine or Pro Tools. It's the same principles, signal paths and everything. And so I learned a lot from Paul, and then a really good friend of mine who was a guy called Tim Lewis, he was the keyboard player for Spiritualized for a long time, and he played with Coil, and he's doing the Liz Fraser. Well, he's been working on the Liz Fraser album for 12 years now. Yeah. So and Tim taught me a lot about. We had a Tascam. No, we had a Fostex B16 in his house with an Alan Heath desk, and we literally, myself, Tim, and this other guitarist, Martin Chellard, who was also in Spiritualized, we just kind of we just learned. We would take the tape machine out to Loco Studios to record drums. So it was a very early way of that the way people work now. You go somewhere nice to do drums, you take it home, you work on stuff. We were doing that in the sort of 1984, 1985. And
I worked with Lupine Howell, the other half of Spiritualized, when they split. Afterwards, I did a radio session for them, actually, yeah. But,
so, we learned a lot. And what was great about working with Tim, he's just a great synthesist, always has been, that I learned a lot about sort of analog synthesizers, and that which I really enjoy now. It's like the studio I was in Prague this week. There's this little secret room that's full of Korgs and JP600s and these crazy old Russian synths and everything. So I love all that side of it. So really, the producing side came from myself, Tim, and Martin, sort of basically being hands-on, learning how to make records, really. And literally, I would just kind of turn the treble up full, put the bass up full, if it sounded okay to me, that was all right. And when I started to work with engineers who were much more technically sort of competent than me, they would get really shocked about what I was doing to EQs and things. I'm like, well, I don't know any better. I just if the mic works, I'll put it up and I'll put it on something, and I still try to apply some of those techniques that have no fear with something. It may technically be wrong, but it might be the right vibe and it might sound really good. So to get back to your question, it was really kind of I drifted in from, the publishing side, the musician side. I never started making tea in a studio and cleaning the toilets and and all the really lovely jobs you have to do. It's we were talking to Tarrant, who was who was a student here, and talking about sort of terrible first studio jobs. And Clinton Murphy, my engineer, was telling him about his first job involved getting a needle stuck in his thumb that somebody left, some hypodermic from doing some heroin at the studio, and he had to go to the hospital for an age test. That was on his first day at the studio. And then I think the second week, they'd sandblasted the studio, so there was sand literally like this high off the ground. He had to clean it all up.
Oh.
You know, so I never did all that horrible stuff.
Put that in perspective. Terence Shepherd, who was literally a graduate from last year, is lucky enough to get a kind of residential assistant engineer job at a studio in Gloucester called Modern World, where Greg does a lot of work in Modern
World. Yeah, I've been there for the last since I came over last month.
It's basically kept them alive.
And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's always interesting having new assistants in, because, you know, it's like everyone wants to be Rick Rubin on the first day, and really it's like, well, there's the kettle, there's the washing up, there's the toilet, it all needs cleaning. Oh, and change the bed sheets, you know. It's like, and you feel kind of bad doing it, but it's all part of this whole, you know. But I never had to do that. I was really lucky. I avoided that whole thing, and. So I basically started just producing bands based, you know, in Tim's flat with a thing.
In Cardiff, in Wales,
in Cardiff, yeah, mixing stuff. And then, sort of late 90s, after we had we had Big Noise. The Big Noise story was basically myself and a guy called Kerry Collier, who was, he's a crew guy now. He's been doing the Manics and Super Furry Animals and all these bands for years and years. And he's always off on tour, you know, he's hardly ever home. So we bought the studio that was called Soundspace in Cardiff for £8,000. I basically conned the bank out of £4,000. I told them I'd pay them back on Monday. I knew there's no way I was going to pay them back. But sort of I basically...
You can't do that anymore, can you?
You can't do it anymore. I conned them out £4,000, but it was the best £4,000 I ever conned anybody out of, because 2 years later we had 2.2 million record sales from the studio. And bearing in mind, it was just a Tascam MSR16 and an Alan Heath desk, you know. And, you know, we had 2 Brit-nominated albums, you know, Manix Records, Catatonia. It was like, so when a knock came on our door one day, and it was the Cardiff Bay Redevelopment Corporation saying, we're knocking your building down, we went into a 2-year legal battle about what is the value of music. And there was very much the approach that music was not, it was entertainment, didn't have any inherent value, monetary value. So it's like, well, we'll give you 40,000 quid. And we're like, oh, that sounds good, 8,000 quid to 40,000, that's great. And the surveyors we brought in said, no, that's not right. You know, basically your business is, look how many record sales you had, look at the kudos you've brought to the country, look at the amount of people you've employed, look at that, you know. So eventually, we kind of like had these negotiations. We got just under £200,000 for our £8,000. And
this was in the 90s, right?
This was in the 90s, late 90s.
That's quite a bit of money.
It was a lot of money, and you know, we invested some in this. You know, we set ourselves up financially as far as like, you know, our own houses and stuff, and we invested a lot in a record label into Big Noise Records that became Booby Trap. So we ploughed a lot of it back into music, and but what it did do was, after that point, I was just kind of a test case for the value of music. And it was like, then a lot of the government organisations started getting involved, and you know, money started going into, like, I'm not saying that we're responsible for courses like this, but no. There's definitely been a sea change in there was serious music, classical music, opera, and there was contemporary music, which was not serious, that didn't really have any value. And you know, we spent a lot of time kind of debating that, you know, I remember being across a desk from some young surveyor for the opposing side. And he said to me, you're over 40 years old. This guy was about 23, 24. You're over 40 years old. Isn't it really time you got a proper job? And I was this close to jumping on the table and kicking him in the face. I was really, really, it was the closest I've ever come to punching, you know, a public figure, you know. It was really upsetting and really annoying. And to this day, it really riles me. Yeah. Because I knew what we were doing was, you know, it brought a lot to the country, and it brought a lot, you know, it gave you know, where we were based, you know, and the artists we were working with, you know, they changed the whole face of like how artists in Wales were perceived. Yeah. So it's like...
Well, it's a bit like, I mean, Sawmills being that kind of legendary studio where so much history has actually happened there. Seminal albums, some of the best bands in the 90s. Yeah. And we take the students down there and it's palpable. You feel it. It's like...
Yeah,
and if
rock
that was
feels
to
the
ever,
same.
Yeah, rock feels the same, sure. If it was ever to go, it would be an absolute tragedy. It should be a museum. It should be part of our history.
And too many studios are going. I mean, it's like...
Well, this is what I wanted to talk about.
I mean, the economics of studios is just... They've just like... there's no way you can justify a premium property in the centre of London for one usage where you maybe have 5 people working in it. It just doesn't. It doesn't. The economics don't stack up. Like York Street Studios in Auckland, where I first met Clint and where I first recorded in New Zealand, closed down last year, and it was heartbreaking because it was just the best drum room anywhere. It had a beautiful old nave. It was just a great place with an amazing atmosphere, but it's in a really high-profile part of Auckland, and you just can't the building's worth £20 million now, and it's like you can't justify that. You know, that not being, the owners can't, you know, actually, and the studio breaks even if it's lucky. Yeah. You know, Olympics gone, you know, Abbey Road nearly went. Yeah. It's only the fact they can sell the Abbey Road name that kept Abbey Road open.
Japanese businessmen coming in to do Beatles covers, Greg, that's what it is.
And hedge fund managers on weekends.
Absolutely.
You know, so
Jollies.
They make a lot of money doing that. But it's what I talk about being flexible. It's like, we don't like it. You know, there are records I've made that if I really had the choice, I'd probably go, you know, it's probably not for me. But then, you know, when you're sort of in your 30s and you've got a divorce to pay for and, you know, and a mortgage to pay.
Been there.
You take the work. And I think you've got, you know, the way I would justify it would be, if I work with these 5 bands who haven't got much money, who I really love, and I do this one project that I maybe don't love so much, but pays me really well, you know, it's a little bit of a sort of, you know, Robin Hood kind of thing. And I think you just you don't need to justify it. I think you just need to take, you know, be flexible, take the work, and, you know, we all want to make, you know, the new Coldplay record, say for the sake of argument, or we all want to make sort of a big artist record. But, you know, there are only a certain amount of those gigs out there.
Do you find, I mean, I very much find that artist development is my favourite area, because you get a young band in, good music, they've got the energy, the enthusiasm, they want it to happen, then they give their all. And then I found that sometimes the bigger jobs, which I won't take, well, I can't now, I'm too busy with this place, but they tend to be a little bit, it's just a job.
I think that I've always had this philosophy about musicians that I will hire for sessions. Like, if I'm going to bring in a guitarist or a keyboard player or a bass player, say, it tends to be not the session guys. Not because they're not amazing players and they don't bring a lot to the session, not to the record, but they have a different mindset when it comes to working. It's like, if you're in a band and you struggle and you're in it because you love music, because the music is the end in itself, then those are the sort of guys who bring a really good energy to the studio and to a recording session. And also they really appreciate the fact you pay them well, because it's the one thing I won't cut down is musicians' budgets. I will negotiate really hard with studios, and I will sort of negotiate really hard with everybody. I'll, you know, right through to mastering. But musicians' budgets I try and keep at a realistic level, because I want you know, musicians who bring out good energy to the session, but also are good players. They haven't got to be the best players, but they have to bring something unique to the process, you know.
Sure.
So I just I like to choose those sort of people, to being surrounded by good people, and you know, and like I say, artist development's a really interesting area. And for me now in New Zealand, what I do is one of the reasons I moved to New Zealand, also I could spend more time doing artist development and find some really good artists to work with, not just there but here as well.
Sure.
And move not so much into management, but more kind of like enabling people through the connections I've built up over the years to, you know, there's a young singer-songwriter in New Zealand that I just did a session for, and I really love what he's doing. So I'm setting him up with a lot of songwriters that I know from the UK, because a lot of the people that I started off making records with are now famous songwriters. You know, like Amy Wadger wrote the last Ed Sheeran single. Yeah. It's a massive worldwide hit. I did Amy's first record. We did it in 4 hours in an afternoon to tape, acoustic guitar and vocal. So a lot of those people that you've done help through the process are now successful musicians. And
it's really satisfying.
And they're usually nice people, and they sort of, you know, Amy's a lovely person, and, you know, she'll write with people that, you know, I bring to her and things. So it's like, you know, I think you do need to build up that network of people, and there is still a lot to be said for that side of it, you know, and just going and spending time with people, and you know, it's worth it, because you do that for 20 years, you get a pretty big, you know that yourself, you get a good book of people that
massive, yeah.
You know, but you got to be careful of how you use those contacts. You know, like say with Hugh Stevens, you know, it's like I constantly get requests, can you give this to Hugh? it's like, well, he's kind of my friend, and I went to his wedding, and I don't really want to bombard him with every new artist that, you know.
Yeah.
But if something's really good, I'll send it to him and get his opinion, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, I think you've got to be very careful of how you use your contacts.
So it's not like me bugging you with mixes all the time then?
No, I'm happy to listen to stuff. You know, when I do things like this, I sort of, you know, I encourage the students to sort of like, you know, get in touch on Facebook, send me stuff, you know, and I try to get through it all, and I do get sent quite a lot of mixes and things, and it's like, and what I try to point out is it's only my personal opinion. I'm not necessarily right or wrong. No. You know, some people will love records I make, some people will hate the records I make, but that's like, you know, hopefully I can give them some, you know, due to my great age and sort of bit of experience, I might be able to give them something back. But something I've learnt in the last couple of years really is just because a musician is young and has not much experience doesn't mean to say they don't have amazing ideas and you can't learn from them. You know, I've learned a lot of really amazing things from young musicians who have a different approach to working than I do. So it's like I've got a good friend, Joel Little. He co-wrote the Lord record. Right. And you know, Joel was I recorded him when he was a young punk pop singer in a band, and you know, now he's a Grammy award-winning record producer, songwriter, and you know, he has a house in LA and a house in Auckland, and his, you know, but he was like 3 weeks away from giving up because he was playing covers in a bar because he's got 2 young kids, and he was like, just, you know, we had this conversation. It's like, you know, with him and his wife, we're like, I was this close to just jacking it all in and getting a proper job.
I've heard that before so many times.
And now it's like, you know, literally, like he wrote a song to give, him and Ella wrote a song to give away, and it wins a Grammy like 18 months later. Yeah. It's like you just don't know who's going to walk in your door, which makes you think, you know, you get to my age, like I'm not going to give up because that next person could walk through the door, you know. So I think you need to be realistic about it, but also you just don't know, you know. I have 2 friends who've had, you know, amazing success from working by working really, really hard and really struggling. Yeah. And you know, it can happen to anybody. And I don't have that level of international success, but I make a good living and I have a really good lifestyle. And for me, that's kind of like, much as I'd love to win a Grammy, it's like just being able to make a living at music is a really successful thing.
That's plenty of time.
You know, and I know lots of musicians who make a good, solid living, and that for me is a great success, really.
Sure.
You know, whether it's teaching or whether it's making records, you know.
Going back to the studios, you know, you commented that a few studios have gone down the pan, very sadly as well. Yeah. I think Clint said when York Street went, it was like his children being sold when the outboard and the desk was going.
It was actually auction. Heartbreaking. You know, there was definitely few tears shed on the last day there. You know, it was like we all went around for drinks and it was like a wake. You know.
So what do you think the prognosis is here? Because I mean, obviously, people like you and me keep the studios alive. It's the bread and butter. We find acts, we break a deal, we get friendly with a studio, they give us a better deal because we keep going back. We take students out, which is fantastic, so they get the opportunity and the studios get the income from that. But labels, I mean, what's happening with the bigger labels? Where are these records being made?
Well, there's much more, like the budgets I get from private clients these days are actually bigger than the budgets I get from labels.
Oh, yeah.
And so many... The way of making it seems to be these days, you make a record yourselves and then you license it, which actually is a better deal for the artist. You get a much higher percentage if a record label doesn't loan you the money to make a record. Can
you expand on that a little bit, just so they understand what you mean with that?
I mean, the basic principle of a record label is they give you the money to make a record, and in return you give them 85% of your income. That's a pretty high percentage, you know. Whereas if you funded the record yourself, you could probably do a 50-50 deal or 60-40 or 75-25. You get a much higher percentage. So if you're willing to invest your own money in a project or find someone to do that, and you make a really good record and you can invest it and you can license it to a label where they just distribute the record, do all the press and promotion for it, it's a much better deal, but you've got to find that money. But the beauty of modern technology is you can make those records a lot cheaper. Yeah. You know, I made a record in my kitchen before I came over. You know, the cat was running around. I put the singer in the pantry. You know, there's like coffee jars everywhere and stuff. And it sounded great. And we had a really nice Pro Tools rig, lots of nice mic pre's, really good mics.
That's the thing.
You know, and it was very pleasant. It was quite enjoyable. You know, until the kid across the road who was learning drums starts playing, you know. And he's got a really bad technique as well. So you kind of want to go and dude, come on, you know, the kick drums all over the place, you know. But
hey, I went to Stevie Winwood's place a few weeks ago.
it's nice
because I know James quite well. We kind of grew up together, James Taylor and I, and it's very much a recording studio, but not as you know it. So he's got a bunch of pre's, really nice pre's, and lovely mics, and a great space, but there's no control room.
Yeah.
Everything's done in a kind of rack on wheels. He just takes about and...
A lot of Nashville studios have that approach. Have still had that approach. That open control room thing where you walk from behind the desk into the room with the musicians. I think it's Toy Shop in London, one of the Moloko studios,
and Real World, big room.
Yeah, the big room at Real World. The whole idea of that was you set everyone around sort of like around the side of the studio.
Yeah.
I mean, when I recorded that, I didn't do that. I mean, I used the wood room next door because it's one of the best drum rooms ever. It's incredible. Yeah, it's an incredible room.
And the stone room with the...
But on the session at Real World, there was 3 of us on the session.
Yeah.
And it was like, hello, Nick, hello. You know, it was like the biggest, craziest control room ever. But it was cool to be there because...
The massive surround SSL,
and, you know,
4K.
Yeah, and the sort of the whole thing with the sort of like the mill pond being at kind of like head level and stuff. It's a beautiful place.
Last time I was there was a diver cleaning it.
All right.
Because it was really freaky. So he's just
but it's like it's the 80s. But a lot of studios are now owned by sort of musicians. You know, the studios left in Auckland it's basically Roundhead Studios, which is owned by Neil Finn from Crowded House, and he's built 2 beautiful studios there. One is it's got the old Neve from Bearsville that Jeff Buckley recorded Grace on. The Bat Out of Hell was recorded on it.
Wow.
It was originally at the Who's Eel Pie Island studio, Pete Townsend's desk. It's the only black Neve.
Have you worked on it?
Oh yeah, I've done loads of records on it, and it's got cigarette burns on it, and also you know there's a little sort of little readout of numbers on there. I don't know what it's for. I think it's some sort of routing thing.
Oh, on the Neve.
On the
black.
Neve, yeah, and it's like it defaults to 666.
Nice.
So it's like, you know, I don't know whether Pete Townsend was trying to tell us something, but it's a really beautiful desk, and so it's a very open plan, very 60s kind of looking studio. Yeah. Lots of incredible equipment that Neil's built up over the years, and he's always wandering around. So it's hard, you know, some musicians find it intimidating, but it's actually quite nice to have someone around you can sort of like get advice from and talk to about things. And there's a B studio downstairs, which is like the best equipped B studio ever. It's just full of amazing mic pre's, great mics. Really, I actually prefer the drum room downstairs. So we've got that facility to use there. But you know, Modern World was set up by Nick Cowan, who put his own money into it.
Yeah.
Because he was going to spend. He had a £30,000 budget for the studio, and that's what he spent on the air conditioning. So
it was a playroom though for him.
Yeah,
It really wasn't it?
His joke was I had an unlimited budget and I went over.
Yeah.
So it was like I think he spent about £1 million on it, and you can buy it for £500,000 now. If you want to buy a nice studio, it's a beautiful place. And we've turned the gym into a drum room because I really didn't like the sound of the main room.
It's a great drum room.
So we borrowed the gym.
We need the window, Greg. We need the window through to the other one.
The window does need, yeah. There's no window between the gym and the other recording area, so we kind of Jimmy rigged the security system, so you could actually, and there's also a screen for doing Dolby surround stuff there. So we kind of like Jimmy rigged it so the security cameras play on the big screen. So it was totally not designed that way.
You see the drummer, but it's half a second after he's played a channel.
Yeah, there is that. And you turn the lights out, and it goes to sort of night vision mode, and they all got scary eyes. So all the drummers look like they're crazy. So
it is quite good. This makes a good drum space in here. We've got this patch through to the control room next door.
It does, yeah.
It really does, yeah.
All my favourite studios have got great drum rooms. I just being a drummer, you want to go somewhere you said it. Oh man,
it's the backbone, isn't it? I mean, we pick drum rooms to the style of music, or you can obviously baffle it down, but it's very much dictates the style or the level of the music you're creating, doesn't it?
And I always like going to new studios because you just don't know what you're going to get. But I like that idea of you don't know what it's going to be like. Like I'm going to a new studio tomorrow, Red Kite Studios it's right out in the wilds of Wales somewhere. It's artist Sam Taylor, he's basically traveling around the world making records. He's just signed this publishing deal, and he's trying to do EPs. He's just come from Nashville. He's got to New York next, and we were trying to work together for a few years. And it's very kind of Neil Young, acoustic guitar, vocals, but it's going to be very kind of like damped down drums with kind of like sort of towels over everything. And it's going to be really lots of harmonica. So it'd be interesting to go there and find another studio. This studio, Faust Studios, we were in this week, they've got a drum basement they call Hell, because it's right down in the sort of bowels of the building, and it's like a stone room with, it's all tiling up to the main room.
It's a chamber, really.
So yeah, it's basically it's like the live echo. It's about the size of the white echo chamber at Rockfield,
right?
Which is like basically Rockfield Studios, one of the few studios you have with natural echo chambers. Just like a PA in there, and these rooms, one of them's kind of painted in shiny white paint, and one's a wood room, and you can feed from either studio on the desk ends out into these rooms and record the reverbs that come.
Any first-year music prods here? Yes. You may well get the opportunity to go and see the reverbs and the plates and the chambers at Rockfield next year. That's one of my hopes, anyway.
It's a really, I mean, they're very helpful there, and
we'll do it while we're at Mono Valley, so we'll just go over the road and have a visit.
I lived at Mono Valley for nearly 2 years.
Did you?
Yeah. I found it really hard to go back there because it was like, it was in my 40 cigarettes a day era, I'd buy pies on the garage coming into town, and like I'd live on pies and cigarettes, and I sort of ballooned to like 21 stone, and I was like, yeah, I nearly had a heart attack. I ended up in hospital and stuff. So that's it. It's not the best job for health, really. So I think it's something you've actually got to be conscious of.
The studio that I built on the farm just off Junction 21, lovely place, bespoke, beautiful floors. The closest place to get food was a burger van. Yeah, I put on.
Well, there's AJ's Burgers by Modern World. It's like
the kebab place.
He knows us all personally by name. And all the assistant engineers there, they're like his sons.
It was never going to take long before it went on to food, by the way.
Yeah, and it was his van has appeared on several album covers. There's a band from Switzerland I recorded there, and the drummer ate there twice a day, but he only opens at 5, so he'd have dinner there, and he'd go back there about 11 and have another burger. And it was like, and so much so that they credited him on the album sleeve, and there's a picture of his van on the inside.
Brilliant. Caterer.
Catering,
session
AJ.
caterer.
He's actually
AJ.
bought a new van. He's got a nice shiny new van there. So
if he knows you from the studio, he gives you like bottles of Coke and stuff.
He does.
He's really generous.
Hello, my friend. Hello, my friend.
No, not that much garlic mayonnaise. Stop.
So, and small. He always gives you large chips instead of small chips.
Yes.
Which it's like I get back and my wife's like, "Oh, you've been on AJ's van again, haven't you?" And it's like, go back running, go and run up that hill.
That's a rubbish New Zealand accent, by the way.
But she's very posh, my wife.
Oh, she's a posh New Zealand girl.
Yeah, father's from Kent, so yeah.
Right.
So she's very posh for a Kiwi. That's why I thought she was hot.
Right, back to the
Anyway,
studios.
Yeah.
I heard an interesting fact about SSL recently, that most of the consoles sold by SSL are actually being sold to colleges at the moment. New consoles.
I can believe that. It's like...
So are we in danger of over-educating with not enough space within the industry? There's a question.
That's a dangerous question to ask somewhere like this, isn't it?
Well, that's why I'm asking it.
Yeah. I have mixed feelings, I have to say, about some of the courses. This course is an exception. I'm not saying that just because I'm here, because I've always found the students I've met from here very engaged in the process. But there are a lot of courses where you feel this. I did one. I lectured at one place, which I won't say where it was, and I'm there, and I could see there was 3 people asleep. I'm like, do you even want to be here? It's like, it's like maybe I was really boring that day, but you want to be engaged in that process of learning, and I think there's, because there was that classic figure a few years ago where there was it 30,000 students getting qualified from music tech courses, and there were about 300 studio jobs available. So how do you make that work? And it's like, what I've encouraged a lot of students that I've known who've worked for, the good students who've worked for the courses, is get a mobile rig. It's beg, steal, borrow some money, get a mobile rig and start recording people yourselves. And it's you're gonna because the studios aren't there anymore to sort of like to give you that experience. You've got to find that experience yourself. Yeah. And it's like all the guys that worked through the system with us, myself and Clint at Modern World, Nick Portman, who I work with in New Zealand a lot. He's got a mobile rig now, and he comes to my kitchen and we record stuff. We go off and we record things together, And he's constantly in demand. It's really hard to sort of...
I love the freedom of that.
Yeah.
Because you haven't just got that drum room space with a few baffles or oak boards, or you can just go, well, what sound do I want? Let's go there.
But it's finding ways to keep that income stream coming in while you're building up your gear and while you're sort of like finding ways through the industry. I mean, one service that normally people offer that I use that I think there's a gap in the market for is I do a lot of 24-hour sessions. Now, I don't work for 24 hours, but what I do, I run the session for 24 hours. So I use the time difference between here and New Zealand to actually keep the session going throughout. I mean, there are certain things you don't need to spend expensive studio time on. Now, I like being in nice studios. I like that sort of, I'm used to doing that. So I'm like, how can I make this work? So there are certain jobs like, drum samples, backing vocal comps, any tuning stuff, vocal tuning stuff you want to do. There's lots of what we call the shit jobs list that you can do on a laptop anywhere.
Yeah.
So you could either have someone else in the studio, like in another room in the kitchen, or in a little ante room, or sometimes I run 2 units where, like, I spent a lot of time last year at ICP studios in Brussels, and I brought like a synth team in to do a lot of programming. Right. And we put them in the kitchen with all the amazing synths and stuff at ICP, and we ran tie lines through to the main room. So myself and Clint would be tracking drums and vocals and guitars and stuff in the main room, whilst the guys were working next door on a lot of the keyboard parts. And I would kind of go between the 2 rooms and, and they'd like, right, we got something, and then we'd feed it through to the main room.
You'd track it as it happens.
And it also meant I could get the band to go next door and bother them and not bother me.
Okay.
So, but the 24-hour thing is basically, like for the last few weeks, I've had Nick Portman working for our night shift in New Zealand. So at the end of the day, we'll like, what these drums need editing, these jobs need doing. So we'll upload to Nick. So when he wakes up in the morning, we run the session in our Gobbler account. So the session's in the cloud, it's updated constantly, and he draws down what he needs, he does the work. By the time we wake up the next morning, all that work's done. So we can carry on with the creative side of recording, rather than this kind of like, there's nothing more boring for me or any producer than sitting there watching somebody move stuff around on screen. Yeah. Move snare drums around, put samples on. It's like, it's just dull, You want the process to be interesting, So it's like, it's worked really good. And I think that obviously you haven't always got the advantage of that time difference between, New Zealand and the UK, but, there's definitely a job, there's definitely a sort of gap in the market for people who want to do those jobs. And it might not sound sexy, but it's certainly more sexy than cleaning toilets and doing the washing up. So I think that's definitely an area, and the software is really cheap. And
it's a great way to hone your skills, especially comping and tuning and stuff, because once you get really quick at it, you're getting paid by job, not by hour.
Yeah.
So if you get really efficient like Clint is, it's like...
I learned so much from watching you tuning back in the studio, watching you actually tune vocals. Now I can just go and tune vocals.
Yeah. Just get in the zone and do it.
Yeah, it is. And then you can have the debate about, what should you tune, what should you move. But those are musical decisions you need to discuss with the artist and before you start a session. Some people want to do things that are very natural. Some people want to do things that are heavily processed. But you have those discussions before you start, so everyone knows where they stand. You're not trying to hide stuff. I think back in the day, the day 5 years ago, you'd hide a lot of stuff from musicians. It's like, hey, dude, that dude can't play drums. We'll sort it out. Now it's like, well, let's try and make you play better. I'm very consciously try to improve musicians on, an artist motivation and stuff is a really big part of the way that I make records these days. And the way I used to do it back when we were working to tape was, if somebody wasn't playing something right, it'd be like, let's figure out a way what's wrong? Why aren't you playing it right? Why are you not singing this properly? Why it's not just about singing the notes, it's about delivering a performance. And especially now I do a lot of non-English language records.
Of course.
It's like, the performance is all you've got. You can't relate to the lyrics, so I spend a lot of time watching the singers sing and watching the musicians perform, because I can see what their body language is.
Yeah.
And you find these little shortcuts and ways around the process.
There is that level of psychology with musicians as well, isn't there, to get a really good performance?
Well, I think it's 50% or more psychology.
Yeah.
It's like whether it's motivational or whether it's psychoacoustics. People will look at something on a screen. I was comping some vocals yesterday I normally never comp with the singer around. and I want them to come in and listen to performance without me to see any edits on screen and stuff. But he really wanted to go through the process on this one song, and we sat there and we went through it all, and we recomped everything.
Yeah.
And the recomp was exactly the same as the comp that myself and Clint did, but then he wasn't in the room. But he needed to go through that process to know that we were getting the best out of his vocal.
Sure.
So, and it was in his head, and it's like, and when we did put one line in as a sort of experiment, and he was like, "Oh, I can hear the difference. I can hear the difference." I'm like, "You can only hear the difference because you can see where the edit point is."
Exactly.
And it's like, it's like, when did music become a visual medium? It's never been a visual medium. It's always been an audio medium. So, I think that's where having a more old school approach. If you, I was quite happy to sort of edit tape with a razor blade, and
Okay, on this subject, tape. Of course, we both grew up on tape.
Yeah.
I started on tape, and I miss the sound actually a lot of the time. But the advent of digital, digital audio workstations and editing, and the amount of things we can do, and we have to address the hot potato, which is plugins, of course, and in-the-box mixing. And I'm sure your opinion on this kind of thing would be great for receivers. I mean, I'm very hybrid, as you know, a bit of both. What's your take on plugins, the quality of plugins, real analog outboard gear? Just give us a little.
Well, my a bit like sort of US politicians' opinions on gay marriage. I'm constantly evolving on the issue, and it's like.
Good analogy.
Well, I spent a lot.
Politics.
I spent a lot. I actually spend a lot of my time now studying US politics. That's one of the reasons I moved to New Zealand, so I can spend time out.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that aside, there is the great con of plugins. It's like, if you bring up a 1176 on screen, it's like that must sound like an 1176 because it looks like one. And it's again, we're back to psychoacoustics. So your mind says, that sounds just like an... Or like you bring up an Vox AC30 amp simulation. It must sound like it because it looks like it. And then you A/B a real one with a plug-in. It's like, it sounds nothing like it. But that's the con of marketing. But plugins are really, really good, and they're really useful. And I'm kind of very much more open to the idea of it. I was very traditional until a few years ago, until the computer started getting faster. What I hated was the way the process was getting slowed down. Because I'm really impatient in the studio. I want to, I want to work fast. I'm happy, I'll turn an album around in 15 to 20 days, including mixing.
Yeah.
I really like to work quickly, and I don't like things that slow the process down. Now, while the computing power was not fast enough, it would drive me crazy. It's like, I don't want to use plugins because they're going to slow this. Every time we want to do something, the computer's going to crash or something. Now, everything's so, my laptop I carry around is more powerful than my first Pro Tools rig. And it's like, it's really, so and in the box mixing, I think that it's definitely the way it's going to go. I love analog desk mix, and all our mixing we still do. I say 95% of my mixes these days that I so I very rarely touch a fader in, but that I commission are analog desk mix, because I like the sound of them. But whereas now compared to like even 3 years ago, every artist wants to do recalls because they used to be able to pull up a file on screen, open it up, move a hi-hat around, close it down. Whereas for us to do a recall on the Duality, you're looking at about an hour and a half turnaround to recall, change all the
then
all
there's the outboard.
Yeah, I mean you can do the Chris Odd Owls method just to keep the same outboard settings for a whole album, which is what we try to do. It's like maybe some reverb times change, but like you actually alter the gain controls on the top of the desk instead of altering the gains on the
So it's hitting
outboard.
compressors at the same level every time.
Yeah, so you can change. You see, so because the desk will remember, the Duality will remember that as part of the recall. But it is longer, but it sounds really good. And so which means that when I do mix recalls, but actually this is a good thing. I factor into the budget. We have a little process with mixing. So myself and Clint will do what we call a WIP, a work in progress mix, which is for me and him to listen to, because I'm often away in New Zealand when he's mixing for me. Yeah. So he'll send me a work in progress mix. I'll make my changes, and that becomes pre-final one.
Okay.
So pre-final one is what we pay to the artist, so they get their input. Then CJM mix one, which is Clint J. Murphy mix one, is the artist mixed with the artist changes. Anything beyond mix 1 gets charged, we charge more for, because the artist already has input. Whereas if you're doing everything in the box, there's like, I know guys who get into like record 7 or 8, 9, it's like, and by I think at that point you lose the integrity of the original mix. You move so many little things around. Yeah. It's like, and you look at all the sort of like, the volume rides and everything. It's like, do we need to ride a hi-hat half a dB in the second verse? Is it making that much difference? Because you know what it would be like in the old days. You do 10 different mixes.
Yeah. Hi-hat
up 1 dB, guitar down in verse 2, and you put them on the next day, and they all sound exactly the same.
I'd only ever automate the VCA groups anyway.
So really, I think by limiting the amount of records you do, it focuses the artists on the final mix. And the one beauty of having analog's desk mix is if you're going to charge somebody more for more recalls, they'll soon be happier with the earlier mixes.
That's a good point.
And there is that thing, the old trick of you just rename the file and send the same mix back. And that's the old trick you would do with labels all the time. There's always some idiot at the label who wants more vocal. Every single time they want more and more vocal, to the point it's like, oh, so it's like an old BBC mix where like the music would have to hit -3 and the vocal would hit at 0. And it's like, so I think you can get it I find if you rename a mix, if you feel really strongly about something, just rename the file, send it off. If they come back and say, no, I still think that is not right, then they've actually made a point of listening. Whereas a lot of the time, they're saying, especially with labels, they're saying something because they feel the need to say something. It's like, and that's fine. That's ego, that is finding your place within the organization and all that stuff. But somebody's place within a record label doesn't interest me. What interests me is fighting the artist's corner to make the best record you can possibly make without compromise it, because some person who's never made a record in his life, thinks that, I don't know, the kick drum should sound more like, I don't know, Taylor Swift or something. But there are a couple of classic stories. One, I was chatting to the production team who did a very famous artist album. I'd love to tell you what it was, but not on camera, I can't tell you. And they were like, so, all right, they phoned up the label. Oh, we've got these, this is after, the first part was, the label phoned up, there's not much bass in this mix. It's like, what are you listening to on? Oh, my laptop. Okay, right. All right, well, that's a good start. So they did some changes. Said, right, we've got these 24-bit mixes for you for mastering. Oh, I've sent the masters off. So, well, we only sent you like low-quality MP3s, so you can listen to them on your phone. Yeah, I sent them to the mastering place. Though. This is the label. This is a major record label. And it's like, so why do we bother? It's like, and it's and that for that story, there's another 10,000 stories of equal incompetence.
On the vocal level, how many vocal grades do you? I mean, generally, I'll do what I'm happy with, +1, +2.
We just usually do a vocal and then a vocal up. Yeah. Instrumental, because everyone wants instrumental nowadays for sync things.
Yes.
So we do those as a matter of course. When I did a record in 1992 for 20th Century Fox for The Simpsons. I wrote a song with Matt Groening for The Simpsons, and John Boylan, who was the executive producer of the whole album, he said, yeah, do a mix, vocal up, and a suit mix. I'm like, what's a suit mix, John? He goes,
yeah.
Where the vocal's so loud that the accountants and the suit guys can understand what the lyric is. So basically, he had this mix where it's a little tiny bit of music and the vocal is like crazy loud, and it's like, so I never bothered with suit mixes, but it was, it's that sort of, you need to be able to sort of apply the idea of vocal ups to people who don't know what the hell they're talking about. But what was the question? Oh, vocal there. So basically, vocal up, but vocal level's a really personal thing. Labels like vocals up, and there's a lot to be said for the fact that the one thing that, like the layman, like my mother or my sister say, would, when they listen to music, the vocal is what their emotional connection comes with the vocal.
Sure.
That's why my mother likes to watch The Voice. Oh, it's got a lovely voice. It's beautiful, beautiful voice. She doesn't really care what the snare drum sounds like, or
no.
Her emotional connection is.
It's with Tom Jones.
Is with Tom, yeah. It's like, did I tell you my Tom Jones story?
No, I want to hear it now, though.
So So I played on a Tom Jones record, and he did this album called Reload, which actually sold 7 million copies.
That was in
the
the
most,
late,
it's
late
big,
90s,
it's the record,
wasn't it? Or
97, 98. Yeah. And it's like, it's probably the record I played on that sold the most records. So we did it, myself and James Bradfield from the Manics did an Elvis Presley cover, and because we knew Tom's history with Elvis. And so it's like, oh, I'm going to meet Tom. And my mother was so excited because she married my dad. She looks a bit like Tom, you know. Tom is her, like, you know, till this day, you know. So I'm in the pub with Tom, and he basically tells me these great stories, none of which are repeatable. So my mother's like, oh, what did Tom say? Oh, it must have been amazing, you know. I'm like, oh, we didn't have much time to talk, Mum. And it's like,
oh, no.
They were just basically amazing, unrepeatable stories that I just couldn't, you know.
One day I'm going to clobber you on that.
Yeah, I'll tell you what they are one day.
Off camera.
And the Future Cut boys told me, who did an album with Tom, told me some great stories about when, like, Tom's in the shower and, like, no, I can't even tell you that one, actually. That's not on camera.
That's something decidedly dodgy. Let's just edit.
It involves, like, Tom in the shower and Elvis with a diamond-studded revolver, and you know.
No.
Yeah, it's a really amazing story. But anyway, yeah, off camera I'll tell you them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, back on track.
Yeah, sorry.
We said about the internet as well. I mean, you said you used the cloud, your own cloud. Do you use Jamnet?
I've never heard of that.
Right, well, it's basically a file transfer protocol that's fast enough to be able to play across the world real time. So you could session.
It's just like this new sort of Pro Tools, whatever, that you can do, like, sort of like live.
I see your interest in this subject.
Well, no, but I've been doing it for years. It's like I've been doing Skype sessions with string sessions for the last 10 years. Sure. Admittedly, they're pretty dodgy, and it's like, you know, you're listening through a string arrangement through, like, one mono microphone with, like, it speeding up and slowing down.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, like, if you're in, a lot of the time we're away in places with really bad internet connections, so even to upload stuff is quite difficult. And also there's also something that really grates on me about, hey man, I got this guitarist in San Francisco, man. You can do this great, he's got a really great feel, man. Let's jam online. It's like, don't, you know, it doesn't interest me, you know. It's
so the
like,
answer to the question is
no. No, but I can see the benefits of it, and it's like, you know, I had this great vision like 10 years ago. One day I'm going to have a house by the beach in New Zealand, and I'm going to look out over the sea, and I'm going to have 5 screens, I'm going to run 5 sessions at the same time, all with high-speed video link-ups. It's going to be incredible. And now it's like, oh, do I really want to do that? I'd rather just go to the beach and not have a video screen with a thing on. But I think all my sessions these days are, like, a lot of time I'll go in, I like being there for that initial tracking stuff. I like to be there when we're creating music, because I enjoy it, and it's a big part of why I do the job. But then I don't need to sit at the back of the control when Clint's mixing. He hates it because I'm staying at the back of his head, and he knows that, you know, it restricts his kind of freedom to try things out. Because, you know, I'll be like, really? You sure you want to do that? Yeah.
Sucking through your teeth. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll give him some very, very specific guidelines about what I want. Like, say the artists I've been working with this week. What I wanted to do a record that sounded like it was made 1976. So I didn't want to use any instrumentation that was not available in 1976. So drums, bass, guitars, acoustics, Hammond organ, piano, mini Moog, because the mini Moogs were available then, brass sections, backing vocals. So I wanted to sound like, you know, David Bowie, Young Americans, or like, you know, or Bowie in Berlin doing Heroes or something.
And did it?
Well, if Bowie was singing in Czech, it would sound just like that. No, I was really thrilled because there's this bit when, you know, I wanted to do the backing vocals with, like, 3 girls in a room, you know, gospel backing singers, and they started singing. It's like, oh man, it's like a Czech Young Americans. I was actually getting a real.
Was that mono as well, just an Omni, or did you go for a pair?
We actually, because Clint actually set up 2 mics on each, and we didn't have time to actually decide which mics to use. So there's actually 6 mics recording these 3 singers. But yeah, they were all in the room around the thing. So we could have done them on 1 mic, but just because I was, you know, I only had them for 5 hours for the whole, and we were working on 5 songs. I wanted to just get all the stuff done. But it was really thrilling, and it was like, so my mix brief to him will be, I don't want to hear any kind of, like, anything modern. I don't want any sort of, like, shiny keyboards. I don't want any additional stuff. I don't want any sort of long delays unless they're like tape. You know, we were using like space echoes and tape echoes. It's one of the reasons I wanted to use at Faust Studios because they've got loads of tape echoes and really cool things in. So the sonic image, this is something that James Bradfield taught me from the Mannix, was about having a really clear sonic image for the record you're making before you play a note. So he'll come in and he'll play you 5 different things. It's like, I want this sort of drum sound and this sort of approach, and he'll give you a sort of a visual image in your head about how the record should sound.
Like a footprint.
Yeah, so you have a really clear idea before you play anything what the record's going to sound like. And sometimes that's a limitation of the instrumentation you use, or, you know, like I could equally have said, I only want a record that's got like, you know, really modern sounds on, you know, like lots of side chaining, lots of like synths, lots of stuff, you know, like this record we made for this band Make Believe, we did at ICP, you know, I wanted it to sound like a really modern record, you know, just big samples, lots of side chaining, lots of synths, but so I create that with Clint, and then it's like you go and mix it, and then send me what you think your interpretation of it is, and then we'll do that, you know, rather than. So I'm trying to be a producer who looks at the big picture all the time, rather than, you know, sort of like the minutiae. Like if I want strings done, I'll bring a really good string arranger, and if I want backing vocals arranged, like Clint's amazing at doing backing vocals, or we'll bring someone in to arrange things. It's like, you know, that sort of Richard Branson theory about you haven't got to micromanage everybody's thing.
No.
But you've got to bring in people you absolutely trust to look at your. I mean, vision's a bit of a sort of pompous word. I've got a great vision as a producer, you know, but you need to have a vision for the thing, for the song, that you discuss with the artist. So you and the artist are, you know, it's the band or a solo artist, are on the same wavelength. So you're not like, when we did this whole David Bowie 1970s thing, then the first, you know, before we started, I'm like, this is what I want to do. What do you think? And it's like, he said, that sounds amazing. I said, are you happy to carry it through? And they were like, you know, so we had, you know, and to be fair, he's let me run with the ball and sort of, you know, and I think we've made a really good record. But if you go into a session and no one really knows what's, you know.
Sure, there's got to be a goal, hasn't there?
You know, I've spent, on some records, I spent a year and a half talking to the artist before we even recorded anything.
Yeah.
You know, you build up friendships, you talk about things. It's like, I always do the thing where, send me 10 or 15 of your favourite songs and tell me why you like every one of those songs. So you instantly go into the studio. Firstly, it means I discover new music all the time.
Yeah.
And also it means that they have sort of like given me what their influences are. It's like, it might just be, I really love that one hi-hat bit, or the whole thing is incredible, that vocal sounds great, or I love that guitar, I don't know how they do it, but it's amazing, you know? So you have this, you already have a vocabulary between you, the two of you. That personal relationship between artist and producer is really, really important, you know?
Sure.
They haven't got to be your best mate, it's just you've got to be able to communicate and discuss things, you know? It's like a marriage, man, you know, you get ups, you get downs, and, you know, but it's like, but communication is the key to making records, as it is with any relationship. Yeah. And I think a lot of, you know, to bring it around a bit back to sort of a lot of the, you know, some of the courses that I talk at, I think there's a lot of emphasis on the technical side of making records, which is important, but the psychology and the communication side of making records is the really important stuff. It's where the really magical things happen if you do something that's so great. And the artist, you can, you know, just have an artist sit in front of the desk and you play them something and they burst into tears. It doesn't get better than that.
No, it doesn't.
You know, it is the greatest moment as a producer. It's like it's the high point in your career. It doesn't matter if no one ever buys the record, but to see them react like that to something that you've helped create for them.
Yeah.
It's that, you know, that is the, you know, making music is the end in itself. You know, we all want to be rich and make money and do, you know, and have a lovely lifestyle, but if making the record is the end in itself, that should be enough. The rest is just stuff, you know. You can find other ways to earn a living, you know. Yeah. But if you can just be, you know, make that record or make that music, and if 1,000 people buy it, if one person buys it, if 10 million people buy it, you know, what you get out of it should be the same. It should be like, I'm really proud of what I did the best I could possibly do, you know, and I'm really proud of that work, you know.
So let's bring it back to what I said, the dangerous question about courses and you know, what happens with all these students that are qualifying. Can I make a suggestion that actually there is the opportunity. There's always the opportunity because the world's a big place.
Yeah.
And the UK is actually quite well thought of for musical
Yeah.
creation. Always has been.
Yeah.
Historically, we've created fantastic music, new genres, we've kept new trends. So there is the option. So there shouldn't be a fear of what's going to happen next. It's a case of you've just got to make it happen.
Yeah.
No one will do it for you.
And like I say, it is a big world. And like the one thing that I've discussed with a few other producers that I've really focused on for like 10 years now is the whole idea of micro careers. It's like, it's, you know, there's plenty of work in the UK, there's plenty of work in the States, but there are also hundreds of other countries with really strong music industries that are crying out for record producers, especially British and American record producers. And there's a real kudos. So I did an interview with George Sheeran recently, and George made a really good point when he went to China, and he goes, the thing about being a British record producer when you travel abroad is people are just really glad that you turned up. You know, and there is that sense of, I've been at the Czech Music Awards last night, and I have a lot of great friends in Prague now, and I've been there a lot doing things. But people are really excited the fact that you've turned up and you want to be part of their industry.
When I was in China, they wouldn't let me leave until I was finished.
Yeah, you know, it's like, and so you know, you need to maximise that, and if you think that, like for quite a few years, I was doing. You know, I was going to New Zealand for a couple of months. I was going to Eastern Europe, sort of Latvia, Estonia, the Netherlands, Ireland, Switzerland, Greece even. Did quite a few records in Greece. You do like a month in all those countries. You filled your whole Europe with work before you even did any work in the UK. So if you just can like sort of, you know, what I would do if I was going somewhere, I'd try to set up some meetings with, you know, just, I don't know, pick some label guys, some bands. You know, if a band invite you to go and do something abroad, just take it, you know, and then when you're there, just network and network and network, you know, and it's like, because people will be really glad to speak to you, because they might have another artist you want to work with, you know. It's like the Prague thing came out of a sort of a thing for a album for a label that came from my manager Steve Budd, and now I've been back there five times, and I've worked with like 4 different Czech artists, and you know, it's become quite a good sort of, you know, income stream for the last few years for me. And, you know, apart from the fact I've now got to travel from New Zealand to Prague all the time, you know, which is like, it's great for your ear miles, it's not good for your sort of like physical health, really. Mainly because of the Czech drink. This time I did, because my client basically I base all my trips around one client. So if someone wants me to do an album, say, they front the travel costs up, then I'll build some other sessions around it. And if they want me to do some other stuff down the road, I'll maybe sort of like, and maybe do 1 or 2 songs, I'll get another client to pay for. So I kind of rotate the cost. Okay. But I'll ask them first. Like what I used to do with business class travel was I'd always put it in the budget, but then when inevitably the budget starts to get trimmed, I will take it out of the budget. So it's like, you know, well, I'll make the sacrifice of I'll come economy class, but I really need to have that string session or another week in the studio or whatever. So, you know, you use it as a trade-off. But it's like, you know, luckily I do so much traveling that I usually get upgraded anyway, so it's of course. But you know
all the girls on the checkout desks.
Not personally,
no.
Obviously on camera, you know. But so what was your question again? So I always go off on one.
I can't remember now. You tell me.
What was Tony's question?
So many students.
So many students. So I think, yeah. So the micro career idea is just don't just look to the UK for work. You know, just in Europe, you have the right to work and travel in Europe. If you have a British passport, you can go anywhere in Europe and work, and you can and there are no restrictions at all. So that's an amazing advantage. You know, I have a lot of New Zealand friends who would kill for that ability to come to Europe and work in all these different territories. They can work in New Zealand and Australia. That's it. You know, Australia's a big place, but there's no one there. You know. They're all around the edge of a plate like sort of watercress, you know?
Well, New Zealand's a big place and it's the population of Wales.
4 million people in New Zealand, but 1.6 live in Auckland.
Yeah.
So the country's essentially empty. You know, that's why there's so many flightless birds, because they just wander around, no one cares, you know? It's like, hey, there's no one here, man. It's like, yeah. It's a beautiful place, and there's some great musicians there. And, you know, there's a real confidence because, you know, they've just bred a world leading artist.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and But I mean, she's an exceptional talent. I mean, it's like,
Oh, yeah.
I met her once, and it was like talking to a 40-year-old. She's really clever, really intelligent, and you know, and it's just like, and you can see why she's so successful. It's like, it's an incredible, you know, it's an amazing thing. Like, just really, really clever, really switched on, you know, musically and sort of just very confident in conversation and stuff, you know. So it's like, you know, but all countries, you know, the awards last night, there's a lot of artists I'd never heard of they've had massive careers, you know, like lifelong careers, and so you can go and tap into those. And because you're often going and you don't know anything about their history, you can go in with no fear.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so you find out these artists, like the band Chinaski who won the award last night, I didn't know anything about them. Their label said, would you come and do a couple of singles for them for their greatest hits album? Or greatest hits? Well, they must have been, I found out they've been together 20 years. So they said, you know, would you come and see us play? So I thought, all right, I'll go to a little bar in Prague and watch them play. I turn up, it's like they're playing at the O2 Arena to 18,000 people.
Cool.
You know, and they sing all their songs in Czech. It's like, oh, so, you know, there's you know, what I thought was just a local artist has a massive fan base.
Yeah.
You know, and those, you know, those are, I think that's, again, as well as the sort of idea of offline work for other producers, you know, that idea of, you know, working overseas is a really good outlet for students. But it's you know, every course has good students and bad students. Some, you can probably spot the ones you feel
Within weeks.
you know, who have got, me and Clint, you know, have got, you know, have they got it, you know, that incredible desire to work 15 hours a day, not complain about it, and just beat themselves up if they do a bad job.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, I don't want to hear sorry. I don't want to hear sorry, man. You know, it's like, just go away, really beat yourself up because you made a mistake. Because I would do the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, if I do a bad job on something, it's like, I'm really down on myself, and I will find out exactly why it didn't work. Because some sessions will not work. You know, you'll turn up and you'll just, like, this is why I do so much prep now, and I spend so much time talking to the artists. Because if there's a point I think, you know, actually I don't really want to be in a room with you for 2 months, I'll make my excuses, and you know, I'm maybe not the right.
No one wants to be stuck
I'm
in a
not the
session
right
like that, do they?
You know, but it's hard to turning down work is the hardest thing as a producer. But sometimes you've got to do it for your own sanity and your own career, really.
Yeah.
You know, you know, but there are jobs I've nearly turned down. Then you look back and think, you know, why did I nearly turn that down? Because now, you know, you find, you know, like, some of those band members are your closest friends, and you make an amazing record together. And it's just, sometimes you think it's just too hard. But that's all right. If being hard is not bad, you know. Sometimes you got to dig for records and just really kind of like find, you know, the sort of like the way to make them. And it's like it's not always the obvious path, you know. Sometimes you've got to like go around the houses a bit to try and find the best way to do it. But,
And then it clicks. It all falls into place.
and that's where experience comes in. You know, you learn more on the sessions that go wrong than you do on the sessions that go right.
Can I ask you a question? So, at this point in your career, do you find you still experiment as much as you did, say, 20 years ago? Or are you going with what you know because of time, budget pressure? So, for example, would you use the same drum setup mic-wise because it's your sound? Or would you change it significantly for a different product if the artist wanted a specific sound? I mean, how experimental are you now? Or is it kind of like, go with what I know because I know we can get that?
Oh, I think quite experimental. But that's only because I run a really tight ship, and I know how long things should take. You know, it's like, so I always build in on. I'd like to try and build in maybe 25% of the session to experiment and try things out. But one thing I never tell the artist is what the schedule is. I'll say, right, this is within our budget. We've got, say, 15 days to record this record.
Yeah.
And I'll know from the first hour of the first day where I need to be at any point during the course of that 15 days. But I'll never tell the artist that, because they don't need to know. Because if you're behind schedule, because often the first thing someone will say at the end of the first day, are we still on schedule? I'm like, well, you don't need to know, because if we weren't, you'd start panicking. If we are, you might relax a bit, and we'll be behind schedule tomorrow. Yeah. So you don't need to know that stuff. So although I plan it out really carefully, I like to build in plenty of time to sort of like, you know, try stuff out, and, you know, let's try 5 different amps out. Let's try, you know, again, going back to the Mannix records, you know, for every guitar track, we'd maybe try 5 guitars and 10 amps.
Talking about guitars, though, I've got to say, first time I watched Greg work, on the SSL, right on the rim of the SSL, he had about 5 or 6 guitar pedals. And as the guitarist was playing a solo part, he was playing these pedals like some sort of weird synthesizer, really in the zone. You couldn't have spoken to it.
I just like that real-time manipulation of sound.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, with a plug-in, you don't have that hands-on thing. Even with assigning faders to things, it's not the same as that's a very tactile approach. And yeah, I really, you know, it's one of my favourite things. I'm the world's worst guitarist, but I love guitars and I love guitar pedals and I love, you know, like when I did Lifeblood with the Mannix, the whole brief was to try and make a very different record to what they normally did. And a lot of the keyboard sounds on there are actually guitar sounds that we did a lot of manipulation with, all with real-time effects, you know. So, you know, just masses of different pedals and everything. But we'd also try, so like I was saying, we'd try, you know, maybe 4 or 5 different amps out, and you know, James has 150 odd guitars, you know, so you would like, which one of these jazz masters should we try on this, you know, and you get to really find the real nuances of tone
at the recording stage.
Yeah, at the recording stage. Yeah. And like I'm not like there's one swear word in my vocabulary that most other engineers don't agree with me, is that like reamping is such a cop-out. It's like just get the sound right, man. It's like, you know, just
take that DI away.
If you can't commit to a sound, you're in the wrong profession. It's like, you know, sure. But I know I'm an old, an old bastard with like old ideas, but it's like, you know, if you can't, you need to commit to things. It's like,
well, otherwise it takes too long,
because the guitar, you know, if you get to a mix stage and all you've got are a couple of drum triggers and like a few like DI guitars and you've got any guitar sounds, you know, I was talking to Ramesh the other day, who sort of, you know, produces a lot of like rock artists, and he was saying he was just getting like, he'd get some mixes through to do, and it'd just be like drum triggers for like kick and snare.
Yeah, but he mixes very heavy music, doesn't he?
He does, but he's like, but you know, put a drum kit up, put some mics on it, you know, be lazy. So nothing worse than getting some files and it's some rubbish drum sound with like 5 snare drums and 6 kick drums on it.
Another producer who likes Mono Valley, the live room at the end.
It's a beautiful live room there.
I love it for drums, yeah.
We used to, when Pearl Stewart Cable was alive, and I did a lot of tracks with his band, he got one of those John Bonham reissue drum kits.
Yeah, cool.
And he got in the Peisty cymbals and everything, and we would just sit there and like we'd, you know, have a few beers and play John Bonham licks on this drum kit.
Love it.
It was amazing. It was like, you know, and I sound just like bloody John Bonham. It does. He was such a sweetheart.
Hey, I made a whole album in mono where the only reverb was that back room.
Yeah, it's an incredible.
You know. Oh, and the plate. Sorry.
Yeah, it's an incredible thing. But you know, but to go back to what I was saying, it was just really just try and commit to sounds, and because if you have a certain drum sound, that's going to dictate what the bass sound is going to be and what the guitar sounds are going to be on top of that. So just let the sounds find their own sort of level. It's like, you know, everything relates to everything else. It's like in the old days, it's like, right, let's do a mix, right, let's get the bass drum up. You know, so well, what use is a bass drum? You know, throw all the faders up and let's listen to everything and contextualize. This I'm always banging on to engineers I work with. They're like, what do you think of the sound? Contextualize it. You know, give me a context. Because it could be it could be the most amazing guitar sound in the world. You bring it up with the other instruments, it might just sound terrible or be too overbearing or too much. And it's like, so you always work sounds in context. You know, just get the basis of the sound going and then run the track and keep doing it that way, because it's the only way you're really going to get an idea. And the same with vocals and the vocal sounds and everything. So always work in track. That would be my sort of advice, really.
We're going to have to wind up this part of it fairly soon, simply because of the amount of time we're allowed to be open.
They're having fun out there.
They are, aren't they? I wonder who that is. They're going to be Nicky Milandi, aren't they? Yeah. Can we have a glass of water, Carlos? Is that okay? Because I'm very conscious that I'm parched. You must be too.
Yeah, I got a little bit of a vodka mouth.
From last night? Yeah, I can see it in the corners.
Yeah.
I was joking. Okay, so can we just say a very big thank you for this part and give it a round of applause for the cameras. Having this sort of experience and kind of presentation for you guys is priceless, really. I know that in my career, in the early days, I learnt so much just by listening to people who've been doing it for decades and watching and learning. And as we know, Greg's up for questions, so think about your questions carefully. Ask him something you really want to know about. You can pick the hands.